What's going on, guys? This is Eric Vasquez here for Design Cuts, and I've got a brand new tutorial for you today. We're going to be learning how to create a cool Christmas party flyer in Photoshop. Now, to do this tutorial, we're going to be using some freebies from the Vibrant Textures, Patterns, and Backgrounds bundle, which I strongly encourage you guys to go and check out. It's an amazing deal and a great value that is going to help you guys take your work to the next level. So for today, we're going to start things off in Photoshop. So go ahead and create a new document. And the first thing that we want to do here is give our document a name. So I'm going to type in Christmas Party Flyer and make sure that you're working in inches. And then once you've done that, go ahead and set the width to 4 inches and the height to 6. Okay, we also want to make sure that our resolution is set to 300. Color mode is RGB, but if you are going to be printing this, then you would instead work in CMYK. But for now, we're just going to leave it set to this. 8-bit is fine, and the background content set to white. Then go ahead and hit create, and that's going to make our new document. The first thing we're going to do is double click on the background layer here to unlock it, and I'm just going to go ahead and call this layer BG. Now this will allow me to change this layer. The next thing we want to do is fill it with a solid color. So click on your foreground color over here and enter the hex value 304240, and that's this nice kind of dark grayish green color. Go ahead and hit OK, and then now that you've set that to your foreground color, all you have to do is press Alt, Option, and Delete on the keyboard, and that is going to fill your layer with that color. From here, come over to the adjustment layer icon found at the bottom of the layers palette that looks like a little black and white circle. Okay, we're going to come all the way up to the top of this list, and we're going to add a solid color adjustment layer. Now for this value, enter 2C5645. And then it's a slightly brighter greenish color. Okay, but what we want to do here is change the blending mode from normal to color. Okay, so that's going to give you a little bit more saturation there. Now we're going to add one more of these layers by once again coming down to the adjustment layer icon, choosing solid color. And for this one, we want to enter a value of 179975, which is an even brighter value. Go ahead and hit OK. And we're not going to change the blending mode here, but we are going to change the opacity. So just press the number 5 on your keyboard, and you'll notice that the opacity has changed to 50%. From here, we're going to go over to our freebies folder for this tutorial and bring in our first design element. The first thing we're going to open up here is Paper Texture 45 from Vector Hut. Now this is one of many awesome kind of inky and grungy textures that you guys will have access to in the full bundle, but for now, you can use this from the freebies folder for this tutorial. But again, to get all of these great textures, patterns, and backgrounds, you will have to get the full bundle. Okay, so all I'm going to do is click and drag this over here into my working document, hold the Control key and click on the layer, and then I'm going to convert this to a smart object. Now I've already changed the name of the layer, but you can just do so if you want to call it something else just by double clicking on the text here and giving it a new name. So now that you've brought this in, let's go ahead and double click on the layer to bring up the layer style dialog box. And we're going to go ahead and check off the color overlay option. And for the fill color, we're going to come down here once again to the hex value, and we're going to change it to 2F4240, and then go ahead and hit OK. All right, and that's just going to keep it in that family of that gray and green kind of teal color. Now the next thing we want to do here is once again lower the opacity to 50%. So if you recall from before, all you have to do that is press the number 5. All right, and now you've just reduced the opacity. You could kind of do it over here and manually drag the slider, but sometimes it's hard to be precise. If you know that you want an exact increment of 10, like 20%, 30%, and 40%, it just saves you time by just simply pressing that number on the keyboard. So let's continue. I'm going to come back over to my freebie folder here, and we're going to check out some of these elements from Lara's Wonderland. Now there's a lot of cool kind of winter, awesome, design elements in here that we can use, and the first one that we're going to be using is this one called Pine Ensemble 01.png. So pop that open in Photoshop, and I'm just going to go ahead and rename this layer really quick. So I'm just going to click on the file name here, copy it, double click on layer 0, paste that in. And now I'm going to click and drag this into my document. Now you'll see right away it's pretty large, so what we want to do is first convert this to a smart object by holding Control, clicking on the layer, and choosing Convert to Smart Object. And then we're going to scale it down, so press Command Control plus T on the keyboard, And you'll notice right away you can't really see the edges of this bounding box. So in order to fix that, go ahead and press Command and 0, and that's going to zoom out a bit and fit this to your screen. Now once you've done that, move your cursor over any of the four corners of the bounding box and drag inwards while holding the Alt, Option, and Shift keys on the keyboard. Okay, scale it down somewhere about there, and go ahead and press Return to apply the changes, and now just Command and the plus symbol to zoom back in. Now press Command T once again so that you can move this around freely, and place it down here on the bottom left corner. I want to make it a little bit bigger, so I'm going to hold Shift and just drag up a little bit, and then press Return to apply the change. Now, what I want to do here is actually, create a few copies of this. So what I'm thinking we'll do here is press Command J to create a copy, and then Command T, hold the Shift key, and just slide this over to the right. So by holding Shift, it's making sure that it stays in alignment. Now I'm just going to use my arrows to tap this over so it matches up nicely with the previous pattern. Now I can hold the Shift key, click on the layer just below, and press Command T once again to do a free transform, and then scale this up just so that it goes to the edge. Okay, so the nice thing about Smart Objects, as I've told you guys before in some of my other tutorials, is that it gives you the freedom to resize images or layers as much as you want without having to worry about any rasterization or loss in quality. Okay, so that's just one of the benefits of working with Smart Objects in this way. So now that we have both of these layers selected, press Command J to duplicate them again, Command T, and then hold the Shift key and drag up. Okay, so just like before, we're going to use the arrows to kind of tap this down until it falls right in place and lines up to look like a seamless pattern. And now we're going to take these two layers and copy them once again, Command J, Command T, hold the Shift key and slide up. Okay, so by doing this, we are creating a seamless pattern over our entire canvas area. So I'm just going to double click on the properties to close that window so that you guys can now see all of these copies of the Pine Ensemble. Alright, so I'm going to select the top one, hold Shift and select the original. And now what I'm going to do is press Command G to put them into a group folder. I'm going to double click on group 1 to change the text, and I'm just going to call this Pine Ensemble so it's very clear, nice and easy to identify. Now what I'm going to do from here is double click on the group folder to bring up the layer style dialog box, check off color overlay, and then let's make sure that we are using the right color in here. Okay, so for this I think we do want to use this color 2F4240, and then go ahead and click OK, OK once again, and then press the number 3 on the keyboard to reduce the opacity to 30% and push it back a little bit. Now, I just noticed that I accidentally put the paper texture into this folder as well, but I wanted to keep it separate and outside of that folder. So how can I fix that? Well, I could just select this layer and then press Command and the left bracket, and that's just going to move it outside of the folder down one position in the layers palette. So now you can actually see that texture again, which is exactly what we want. So now that we have a couple of textures and a pattern and a few adjustment layers here, we can select the top Pine Ensemble group folder, hold the Shift key and click on the BG layer, and then once again press Command Control plus G on the keyboard to put it into a group folder, double click on group 1 and just change the name of this folder to background. So now we have built up our background to serve as the basis for our party flyer. So if you haven't done so already, just make sure to go ahead and save your work. Once you've saved your work, return to the freebies folder, and we will now open up tree5.png. Okay, once again, if you want to just name this with the same name as the file itself, just come into the file name, click on it, copy it, come back into Photoshop and double click on the layer text and then paste it in. Now I'm just going to move that to the side, click and drag this in here and convert it to a smart object. And then I can come over here and just close out of a few of these other windows here. Okay, so now that we have our tree in here, press Command T to do a free transform, Command 0 to zoom out so you can see the bounding box, and then we're going to scale it down while holding the Shift key. Okay, and you can see if I hold down Shift, it's kind of scaling from that lower left-hand side, but if I hold Alt, Option, and Shift, it's going to scale from the center. So that's the difference when I tell you guys to either hold just Shift by itself or Alt, Option, and Shift all together. Alright, so we want to scale this down somewhere around here, and the goal now is going to be to kind of create a bunch of these trees to stagger along the bottom of the image. So place your first one in here, press Command J to make another copy, Command T to do a free transform, hold Shift and slide it over a bit, and then just move it down and maybe scale it down slightly while holding Alt, Option, and Shift and dragging inwards from the corner there. Position it around there, press Command J to create another copy, Command T, and then press Shift once again and slide this over. And let's move this one down and make it a bit smaller. Okay, once again, we're going to continue this process just to, continue to stagger some of these trees a bit more, scale this one up a bit, just to try and create a little bit of depth. All right, Command J, move this one up, somewhere around there, press Return to apply the changes, and then just repeat this maybe 2 or 3 more times so that we can kind of fill up the bottom here with a nice row of pine trees. Okay, so this is going to create kind of a forest look, a makeshift forest. Okay, and then we'll make one more, maybe just position it down here in the corner. All right, but you should end up with something like this. And we have about, 7 or 8 copies here. You can make one more if you want, and just maybe fill in some of this area down here. And then what we're going to do is create a new layer. So come down here to the bottom of the layers palette and click on this icon just next to the trash can to create a new layer. Now we're going to take this layer and move it all the way down behind our trees. From here, press B on the keyboard to get your brush tool. Press the letter D to get your default colors so that you now have a solid black color. And as for your brush, just take a look here at the top toolbar. Make sure that it's a hard round brush set to 100% opacity, and then press the right bracket on the keyboard to make it a little bit larger. Now from here, all we're going to do is begin brushing in on the bottom of the image. Now the goal here is to just kind of fill in some of these gaps in between the trees to create a solid color. And you'll see how this is going to turn out in just a few moments, but just using the brush tool like this is going to help us just to kind of paint a nicer looking picture with a little bit less of these, gaps coming in between the trees here. Let's just double click on this layer real quick and just call it Fill. Hold the Shift key and select on your top tree layer. Okay, so you've got all these layers selected. Press Command G to put them into a group folder. Double click on the name, and then let's just call this folder Trees. Now what we want to do next is double click on the layer to bring up the layer styles. Check off Color Overlay, and then just ensure that we have this fill color selected. Okay, so that should be 2F4240. All right, good to go. And now you guys can see how that looks. So if you want to, now you can come inside that folder by clicking this arrow next to the tree folder, and you can select any of these trees. I'm just holding the Control key and clicking on them, and that's going to take me right to that layer. And now you can continue to play around with, the size and the placement of these a little bit more until you come up with something that you're happy with. Okay, and then you can always come back to the fill layer and now just paint in with your brush, and it's all going to be the same color. So now you guys can kind of see where I was going with that. All right, and now what we can do, we can even move this whole folder up a little bit to give ourselves just a little bit more room on the bottom. Now, as you can see, obviously there's some color that we need to fill in here. So I'm just going to switch back to my brush by pressing B, press the right bracket to make it a little bit larger, and just fill in that lower portion here. Okay, and now we have established our tree border on the bottom of the image. Come back to the freebie folder, and this time open up Snowflake 8. Before I open it, I'm just going to select the name and copy it, open it in Photoshop, double click on the Layer 0 text, and now just press Command V to paste that name. Drag it over here to the side, bring it into your document, hold Control, and convert it to a smart object by clicking on the layer and choosing Convert to Smart Object from the list. Now once again, press Command T. To do a free transform, hold Alt, Option, and Shift, and just scale this down. Oops, zoom back in here. All right, now press Command T, and what we want to do here is move this to the top of our image. Okay, so I'm just going to move this up here, make it a little bit smaller, and now zoom in so I can see what's going on. And I'm going to press Command J to duplicate this. Hold the Shift key and tap the right arrow to move this over to the right, and try to space it out about equally. We're going to create a couple of copies here because we want a border basically going across the top of the image. So I'm just going to duplicate this a few more times until I've got maybe around 15 or 16 copies so that it will fit nicely across and be, a pretty good size. It'll just serve as a nice detail and design element here. All right, and of course it wouldn't feel like a Christmas party without a little snow. So I'm just going to select all these by clicking on the top one, holding Shift and selecting the bottom one. Press Command T and then just drag in from the lower right hand corner while holding Shift to give yourself a little bit more room to work. Now I can select that copy again, the last copy, copy 12, and just add a few more copies in here. So again, if you need to make more space, select the top one, hold Shift and grab the bottom one, press Command T, and then just drag inwards. And because these are all smart objects, you can do this without having to worry about your snowflake looking worse and worse and melting away. All right, so now I've got 16 copies. I'm just going to resize it one more time to just about there. Go ahead and press Return on the keyboard. And now what we want to do is make sure that these are all evenly spaced out. So you should have all of your snowflakes selected in the Layers palette. And once you do, look up here on your top toolbar. Well, you've got some align tools here, and there's quite a few of them. But the one that we're concerned with right now is this one that says Distribute Horizontal Centers. And once you do that, you should see a little shift, and that's basically just distributing these evenly so that there's an even amount of space in between each of the snowflakes. Now, from here, press Command G on the keyboard to put them all into a group folder. Double-click on the Group 1 text, and just change this to Snowflake Border. All right, from there, double-click on the group folder to bring up the layer styles again. Check off the color overlay option, and by default, you will have this color in here, which is good. And now we're going to add one more option. Let's check off the stroke option. We're going to make sure that it's set to 1 pixel for the size, the position outside, and for the fill color, we actually want it to be the same fill color that we were using before. So if you remember, that was 2F4240, and go ahead and hit OK. And by adding this 1 pixel stroke, it's just going to make our snowflakes look a little bit bolder. So once you've done that, go ahead and click OK to apply the changes, and then press Command 0 to zoom out and fit this to your screen. So we've now built a snowflake border along the top and this nice row of trees along the bottom. The next thing we're going to do is create another new layer, and then press T on the keyboard to get your type tool. Now from here, I'm going to click down here on the bottom of the image, and we're going to type out the following words. So I'm going to put on caps lock, or you can hold the Shift key and type out the following words. Okay, but it looks like I can't see anything right now. So if you guys run into that same problem, just go ahead and highlight the text, and you'll notice up here that our fill color is exactly the same as these trees. So instead, I'm going to come over here to my toolbar and just click on that arrow so that now it's set to white, and I should be able to see my text better. Okay, so go ahead and click on this little A over here on your panels to open your character panel. And if you guys don't have that, all you have to do is come up to the window menu and choose character from the list. Now, what we want to do, because we have our text highlighted, is change this typeface to veneer. Now, I believe this is a free font that most of you guys should have, but if not, any clean sans serif font will do. You just want to make sure that it's kind of a bold, heavier weight. Okay, and then from there, we're going to continue typing out this phrase, but we're going to change the point size. So right now it's set to about 8. Let's go ahead and change this to 5.13, and then press Enter. Okay, so now what we can do is continue kind of typing this out as I was starting to do before. So let's zoom in, Command and plus on the keyboard, click back in here, and we're going to type out elf factory, hold the Shift key, and now type the backslash, or the key just under the delete key, which is kind of this like vertical line, and that's just going to serve as a little bit of a divider. Then we're going to type 446 Nicholas Boulevard, add another space, and then hold Shift and type that key just below the delete key once again to create that vertical line. And then we'll type New York, comma, NY 10011. All right, and now you'll notice that the letters are spaced out quite a bit, which is good, but if yours is not automatically set up this way, you'll want to look over here in your character panel to the tracking, and you'll see it has this little VA with these arrows pointing away from each other. And you want to set that value to about 280 or so, just to space out your letters nicely. All right, so we can even change this to maybe 260 to make it a little bit less. All right, and you should now have something like this. So what we want to do from here is grab our type tool again, and maybe click 2 or 3 times inside of here, and now we can change the fill color from our character panel. So I'm going to click in here, and for the hex value, I'm actually going to change this to F8E7A2, which is this kind of light yellow beige color. Okay, and there we go. So now hold the Shift key and tap this down and roughly in the center of your image. Next, we're going to come back to our freebie folder. This time we will open up Snowflake 6 from the freebies folder in Photoshop. All right, I'm just going to paste in the name there, close the character panel, and then move this tab to the side and drag in the snowflake. Hold Control and convert it to a smart object. Press Command T to do a free transform, Command 0 to fit it to screen, and then hold Alt, Option, and Shift and scale it down. Now I'll zoom in by pressing Command and the plus key so that I can get a better look here. Press Command T once again, and what I want to do is make this nice and small, and I'm going to place it just at the beginning of our address here on the bottom. Now, because this is kind of black on our grayish green color, you can't really see it that well, so I'm going to double click on this layer to bring up the layer styles, check off color overlay, and this time let's go ahead and change this value, the hex value, to 179975. That's going to be a brighter teal kind of green color. All right, and once you've done that, press Command J to make a copy, hold the Shift key, and then hold down the right arrow at the same time so that you can just slide this icon or illustration over to the end of our address. Now, as you can see, it's about to go off the screen here, and I can no longer see it. So I'm going to hold the space bar to get this hand tool, and then just click and drag, and that will allow me to kind of navigate around my document. All right, tap it over a few more times so that you have about an even amount of space on both sides. Okay, and you should now have something like this. So I'm going to select the top snowflake layer, hold Shift and click on the address, press Command G, double click on the Group 1 text, and just rename this folder Address. All right, and now we can zoom out a bit, and let's just place that a little bit more to the left so that it's about in the center there. From here, we can begin adding a little bit more text in this area here. So create a new layer, and the shortcut to do that too, if you guys don't want to just click on this icon on the bottom, is Command Control plus Alt Option plus Shift plus the letter N on the keyboard. All right, and that's the shortcut to create a new layer. Now grab your type tool once again and type out the number 24. Now, as you can see, I've lost my character panel over here in the toolbar, so I'm going to have to get that again by going to the window menu and choosing character from the list. Now this time, change the typeface from Veneer to Rockwell. And Rockwell is another font that is pretty much on every computer as far as I know, but if you don't have it, then you can just use another slab serif. Okay, so all a slab serif is basically, you know, those fonts that have those nice kind of chunky bottoms or like stems on them, and it looks something like that. Now I'm going to grab my type tool and click 2 or 3 times inside of the text here. Now I want to change the point size from 29 or whatever it happens to be to 48 point. And I'm going to click on the color, and we're also going to change this value to 179975. Okay, so that'll match the color of the little snowflake that we just added down here. Now as for the tracking, we don't want to space these out so much, so I might just type in a value of about 20, or you can actually manually do this by clicking your cursor in between the 2 numbers, holding the Alt Option key, and then typing either the left arrow to move them closer together, or the right arrow to space them apart. All right, but somewhere about there looks pretty good. Then what I'm going to do is add another new layer, grab my type tool again, click below the 24, and now I will type out the word November. This time I'm going to select and highlight the text, change it back to Veneer, and let's select the black style that we used before. And we're also going to change our color back here to what we had previously. So if you remember, that was F8, E7, A2. And now for the other values in here, let's just check to make sure that that's about 8 point in size, and we can leave the tracking set to 20. Okay, and all I'm going to do now is just use the Shift key and my arrows to tap this underneath the number 24. All right, and give it a little bit of space there. You don't want to have it super close to the number. Give it a little bit of space there. A little breathing room is always a good thing. Okay, so now you have November 24th of November set up. So what I want to do over here in my layers palette is just move the November below the number 24. So to do that, I'm going to hold the Command key and type the left bracket 1 time. Now, I'll hold the Shift key and select the 24, so both of those layers are selected. Then press Command Control plus J to duplicate them. Hold the Shift key and the right arrow to slide this over to the right. Now this time, we're actually going to hold the Command key, tap the left bracket 2 more times to move it below our previous text. Press T to get your type tool and click inside here and change the number 24 to the number 8. And now what I'm going to do is just grab my move tool to deselect that. Press Command J once again to duplicate the 8, Command and the left bracket to move it down, and then Shift and the right arrow to slide it over. Now this time, instead of the number 8 again, we're going to type out the letters PM. Okay, and because it's so huge, we're actually going to shrink this down. So press Command T, hold Alt Option and Shift, and just scale it down so that it's a little bit smaller and less distracting. And all we want to do here is move it closer to the 8, somewhere along the center line here of the number. And now we can grab our type tool, click inside of November here, and this time we're going to say doors open. All right, so doors open at 8 p.m. Okay, and that looks pretty good. Maybe I'll just tap this a little bit closer there and tap over the doors open, somewhere about there. Now I'm going to select the doors open layer, hold Shift and select the 8, so all 3 of these layers are selected. Press Command J to duplicate them, then Command and the left bracket 3 times to move those layers down. And the only reason I'm doing that is because I want them to kind of be in order in a way that makes sense. So I'm reading from left to right. I want these to go from top to bottom. It just makes sense. It may be a little bit of OCD on my behalf, but it helps me keep track of these things. Okay, but feel free to do whatever works best for you in terms of your layer ordering. The important thing though is to be able to identify each of these layers pretty quickly in case you need to make changes. So now I'm going to select and highlight the number 8 and type out the number 10. Now again, there's quite a lot of space in between the 1 and the 0, so if you guys remember from before, the way to change this manually is by moving your cursor in between the 2 characters that you would like to adjust, holding the Alt Option key, and then tapping the left arrow to reduce the amount of space in between those 2 numbers. Okay, and now I'm going to select the PM copy here, move it in front of the number 10, grab my type tool, and click inside and change this to a dollar symbol. All right, now let's just tuck this in a little bit more here. Hold the Command key and select the 10. And now I'm just going to tap this over a bit more. Somewhere about there looks good. And then we'll select our type tool again and click on the doors open text, and this time change it to enter. Okay, so it should look like this. It should say, $10 to enter just at the end of our text. Now from here, what I'm going to do is select the to enter text, hold Shift and select the 24 all the way at the top, zoom out by pressing Command and 0. I'm just going to tap this over and down a bit, somewhere about there. Okay, so it's roughly centered with our other text above. The next thing I'm going to do is create another new layer, grab my type tool once again, and click in here. And now what I'm going to do is hold the Alt Option key and type the number 8 maybe 6 times. All right, and by doing that, you should get these little bullet points in here. So let me zoom in so I can show you guys what I'm talking about. You should get these little circles like that. I'm going to grab my type tool, click inside here, bring up my character panel, and what I want to do now is just change the color. All right, we're going to change the fill color to 179975, press OK, and let's go ahead and adjust the tracking and set it to about 240. All right, so again, that's going to space these apart a little bit more. Now, once you've done that, you can close the character panel or just dock it over here on the side. Press Command T to do a free transform. Hold the Shift key and just rotate this until it's upright at about 90 degrees. Okay, and all I'm going to do now is kind of position this in between the number 24 and the number 8 so that it can kind of serve as a little bit of a divider. Now press Command J to duplicate it once again. Hold the Shift key and then press the right arrow or hold the right arrow until this slides over into place between the PM and the dollar sign. So that will now kind of serve as a little bit of a divider or a rule between each of these little blocks of text. All right, so let's go back to our freebie folder, and you should have a vector text folder here. Now, inside of here, there's a couple of phrases that I've outlined just using some free typefaces to share with you guys. So all the fonts that were used to create these are free fonts that can be downloaded from defont.com, and you guys should be able to get the URLs for those if you want the live versions of the text. But for now, these are just the outlined phrases that I've used in Adobe Illustrator. And as you can see, depending on which version of Illustrator you have, I saved these out as an EPS 8, as well as versions for CS 4, 5, 6, and Creative Cloud. So there's a few different versions in here for you guys to choose from, so you should be able to follow along. So once you've opened up the phrase, the celebration text for your version of Illustrator, press Command Control plus A to select all, and then Command C to copy it. Now jump back over to Photoshop, and then press Command V to paste it. Now when it asks you how you want to paste this, make sure to choose Smart Object from the list and hit OK. Now before we press Return, we're going to hold the Shift key and just slide this down, and then hold Alt Option and Shift and drag inwards from any of the four corners. And the goal here is to try and align this so that it matches up with the width of our text. Alright, so just shrink that down a little bit more, hold Shift and slide it up a bit. Somewhere around there looks good. And now what we're going to do is just double click on the Vector Smart Object text here and type out the word celebration so we can identify that layer. And then double click on it to bring up the layer styles and check off color overlay. Now for the fill color, we can go ahead and type in the color we want to use manually, or you'll see if I move outside of this dialog box that I have an eyedropper tool which will allow me to sample any of the colors from my image. So I'm just going to go ahead and sample this color from November so that I can match the hex value F8E7A2 and then go ahead and hit OK twice. Okay, so we now have our date and time set up. So select the Celebration Smart Object text, hold Shift and come down here and select the To Enter text, which should be the last or kind of bottom text layer that we've created here. Then press Command G to put it into a group folder, double click on the Group 1 text and type out date and time. Alright, so we now have that all in one group folder. And it looks a little bit weird here to me to have these little gaps kind of interfering with the top of this text. So I'm just going to fix that really quick by going into the Trees group folder, selecting the fill layer all the way at the bottom, and grabbing my brush and making it a little bit smaller by tapping the left bracket. And I'm just going to fill in a little bit of these gaps here, just so I have a little bit more room around the text and it's a little bit easier to read. And if you see any other little weird points in there, just go ahead and fill those in while you're there. Alright, but once you're happy with that, click on the arrow here to collapse the folder, and then once again make sure to save your work. Alright, now we're going to come back to the Freebies folder, and this time we're going to select the Slay EPS layer. And again, whichever version of Illustrator you're using, open up that version of the EPS file. Press Command A to select all, Command C to copy it, and then Command Tab until you come back to Photoshop. Command V to paste it, and paste it as a smart object. Now for the sleigh, what we want to do here is scale it down a bit by holding Alt Option and Shift. And I'm just going to make it about that size because we want it to look like Santa is riding over these trees here. Alright, so hold Shift and move it up a bit. Then I'm just going to double click on the layer and call it Sleigh. Alright, change the name, add a color overlay, layer style, and let's go ahead and enter 2F4240. So you guys can probably tell by now, we're using a fairly limited color palette, so some of these colors, have harmony and they work together very nicely. Alright, and once you've done that, press Command G just to put the sleigh in a group folder by itself. And now we can come back to our Freebies folder once again, and we're now going to add our Happy Holidays text. Okay, so again, this was created using a free font from dafont.com. This is just the outline version so that nothing gets messed up when you guys try to use it. Press Command Control plus A to select all, then Command C to copy it, Command and Tab to come back into Photoshop, and Command and V to paste it as a smart object. Now I'm going to scale this down a bit by holding Alt Option and Shift and dragging inwards, and then hold the Shift key and just slide it up here into this nice empty space towards the top of the image. I'm going to tap it over a little bit just to try and eyeball it and center it somewhere about there. And then the next thing we're going to do is just double click to change the name of this text, change the name of the layer to Happy Holidays. Now I'm going to double click on the layer and add a color fill or a color overlay. Click on the fill color, and then once again sample this light beige color from down here. Go ahead and click OK, and you should now have your Happy Holidays text. And by using this lighter color, it's really going to stand out nicely on that background. From here, go ahead and create another new layer, grab your type tool, click somewhere below the Happy Holidays text, and once again we're going to create a few bullets. So to do that, hold Alt Option and press the number 8 on the keyboard, and made about 6 of these so far. Then I'm going to click and copy them, press the right arrow, and maybe paste them a few more times, just so we have enough bullets to kind of span underneath the entire word or phrase. And now once you've done that, what we're going to do is actually click in here to highlight the text, change the fill color to this darker gray-green color here, 2F4240, and then hit OK. Okay, and then from there, I'm just going to tap this up a bit, press Command J to make a copy, and then hold Shift and the up key to move this copy up. All right, we're going to place this copy up here towards the top of our phrase. All right, so you should now have 2 copies of this. You move this one down a little bit more, all right, just to give it a little bit of space. And that's looking pretty good. So now I'm going to select this bottom one, hold Shift and select the copy above it, press Command G to put it into a group folder. And now once you've changed that to rules, what we're going to do is come down here to add a layer mask at the bottom of the layers palette. Press B on the keyboard to get your brush tool. And then over here for your colors, just make sure that you have a solid black foreground color selected. So if white is your foreground color, press X on the keyboard to toggle between the two, or you can press these little arrows just above it. Now once you've done that, all we're going to do is come in here and brush out a few of these dots that are overlapping our letters. So brush around the Y and also around the H in the word happy. All right, so that it'll kind of break around these letters. All right, so you should end up with something like that. Now hold the Shift key, select the Happy Holidays Smart Object text layer below, press Command G to put these into a group folder, double click on the Group 1 text, and change this to Happy Holidays. Now we'll come back to our freebie folder, and from the Lara's Wonderland, we're going to grab the ancientgold.jpg file. Okay, I'm going to move this to the side here, click and drag this into my document, hold the Control key and convert this to a smart object, press Command T to do a free transform, then Command 0 to fit it to the screen, hold Shift and just kind of zoom and just kind of drag in a bit to scale that down. Okay, somewhere about there looks good. Then press Return to apply the changes, and then Command 0 to fit this image in your screen. Now from here, we're going to add a couple of adjustment layers. So I'm going to hold the Alt Option key, and now click on the adjustment layer icon and choose Hue Saturation from the list. Now because I held the Alt Option key down, it's going to give me this option where I can check off this box that says Use Previous Layer to create clipping mask and hit OK. Now you'll see that there's a little arrow here that's attached to this texture layer. And all that's telling us is that whatever changes we make to the hue saturation layer, it's only going to affect this layer directly below that it is clipped to. Okay, so for the properties, let's go ahead and change the hue to about 8, and we'll change the saturation value here to 21. All right, so it should look like that. It's a little bit more yellowish gold looking. Now select the Ancient Gold Smart Object layer once again, come back down here to the adjustment layer icon, and this time choose Solid Color. Now, because we kind of sandwiched this between the hue saturation layer and the Ancient Gold layer, it's going to automatically have a clipping mask applied to it. So all we have to do here is change the hex value. I'm going to make this F8E7A2, which is that kind of light beige color we've been using, but we want to make sure that this is now above the hue saturation adjustment layer. So if you remember from before, the shortcut to move your layers around inside of the layers palette is Command Control and the right bracket to move it up, or Command Control and the left bracket to move it down. So we're going to press the right bracket to make sure that it sits above the hue saturation adjustment layer, and then let's just change the blend mode from normal to color. Okay, so you should now have something like this. So select the top color fill layer, hold Shift and select the Ancient Gold Smart Object texture, press Command G to put it into a group folder, click on the Group 1 text, and just change this name to gold. So right now this texture is kind of covering everything and you can't really see what's going on, so let's just turn off the visibility for a moment. Now what we want to do here is actually kind of change this up so that the texture, the gold texture, is only visible inside of any of these elements that are filled with that light beige color. So our address, these words down here, the celebration text, and the Happy Holidays text. So what we're going to do is expand the contents of these folders. All right, so first start off by expanding the Happy Holidays folder. Now I'm going to hold the Command key, and you'll see that my cursor kind of changes over here as I move over the thumbnail. So I'm going to click on the layer thumbnail, and that's going to activate a selection around that smart object. Now we're also going to do this for any of these other layers that again, contain this light beige color. But as you do this, because we want to add to our existing selection, we want to hold the Shift key at the same time. So hold Shift and Command and click on the layer thumbnail for any of these other layers that are filled with that light beige color. So we're going to select the layer thumbnail icon for the celebration layer, hold Command and Shift, and you'll see that little plus sign here. That's just telling you that you're adding to your selection. So we're going to continue to do that. Scroll down, expand the folders until you have all of your beige words and phrases selected at the same time. Now, turn the visibility of the gold group folder back on and come down to the bottom of the layers palette and select the layer mask icon. So now, that texture is visible inside of all of the words that we just selected. Hopefully that makes sense. All right, I know it's a little bit tricky, but if you guys followed along with what I was doing, you should end up with the same result. Now at this point, what we want to do is actually turn off those layers in here that we had selected. All right, so if I zoom in a bit, you can see that there's a little bit of a line or a fuzzy edge here. So I want to turn off that smart object layer because now all I need to really see is the gold texture. Okay, so I'm going to turn off November, turn off the celebration text, the doors open text, the to enter text, and the address on the bottom, so that the only light beige layer that's left on is the Happy Holidays layer. Okay, so I'm going to scroll back up here, and with my Happy Holidays Smart Object text selected, I'm just going to tap the down arrow maybe 2 or 3 times, and to the right maybe once or twice. All right, that's going to create this nice kind of outline look and just give a little bit of depth to our text and ensure that it still remains the focal point of the design. So if I turn that on and off, you can see what's happening there. It's just adding a little bit of a nice highlight edge. Okay, so now all I have to do is just collapse that folder, and you can select all these layers if you want, put them inside of one big group just called artwork, and our design is complete. So this is how you can create a really fun and cool Christmas party flyer design just using a few of these freebie elements from this awesome design bundle. I strongly encourage you guys to go and check out the Vibrant Textures, Patterns, and Backgrounds bundle from Design Cuts. It's really full of so many awesome backgrounds, textures, and patterns, just as the name would imply, but it's a really great collection that can serve as, very important design elements for any kind of design that you guys want. There's so much more in here than just, winter-themed items, but this is just a small preview and selection of what is available. So it's a really great value, and it'll definitely help you guys step up your design game. I hope that you've enjoyed the tutorial today and hopefully picked up a few new tricks and techniques along the way. Once again, this is Eric Vasquez. Thank you guys so much for following along, and we'll see you next time.